Today, we're going to do something that we haven't done before. We are going to watch and review one of our own PC build videos. This one dates back to October of 2021. It's not one of my very first builds, but it is one of the first ones that I could find still on Facebook. So let's check out some of the things that were different about our setup, maybe things I would do differently, and maybe we'll be sad about some things that are from a bygone era. First thing that you can see, we've actually got a lot of stuff from Corsair. I actually don't use a ton of stuff from Corsair anymore, and there's a couple of reasons for that. One, they're quite expensive, so unless you have a ton of money in the budget, it just really isn't worth the extra cost of getting that Corsair brand. It is backed up by a really good software. It can just be too much sometimes. The other thing is they are really tough for cable management. This case has 9 RGB Corsair fans, which means there's 18 cables that need to get plugged into a hub. And because there are so many fans, you actually need 2 different hubs just to control all these fans. So it's pretty inconvenient. It's hard to cable manage, and it costs a lot. In just fans here, you're looking at $200 in fans and another $150 to $180 in the cooler on this build. Plus the RGB light strip, which was another $40 to $50. That's a lot of extra money for just some fancy RGB. This one is going to make us all a little bit sad. Goodbye, EVGA. We all loved you. I mean, I know they're not out of business, but they no longer sell graphics cards. And in my opinion, they were one of the best companies to get graphics cards with. They always had stock. They were really good about, during the GPU crunch, making sure that everyone was able to get some of their GPUs. They had a system on their website where you could sign up on a wait list to buy one of their GPUs, whereas companies like Best Buy would put them out on their website, and bots would snag them up before you ever even got them into your cart. So I really loved EVGA. I loved buying their parts. They were great to work with. They made good quality stuff, and they did it for a really reasonable price. So I'm definitely sad to see that they're no longer making graphics cards. Cue the sad music. So this was something that was really cool for me at the time. This was the first PC I ever did that had a laser engraved logo on it. This is my first kind of dipping my toes into the custom PC world, whereas everything else I was doing custom build lists. Whereas everything before this, we would custom pick all of the parts for the build. This was actually just starting to get into customizing the actual PC itself, like the case and other components. Here's something that you won't see me use very much anymore either, is my iFixit driver. This thing actually served me really well for a couple of years, but I have since upgraded to the Linus Tech Tip screwdriver, which is really nice. It's got a ratcheting system. It's got a bigger, more comfy handle for long use, or for when you're using it for a long period of time. And just in general, I prefer it. The only time you'll see me pull out my iFixit driver is if I need a really specialty bit that I don't have with the Linus Tech Tip screwdriver. There's some more of that laser engraving. It looks a little bit hazy here because it hasn't been cleaned off yet, but it turned out really, really nice. Something that's really obvious here is the views of my cameras. So you can see right here, I've got a rear perspective that you can just kind of barely see through the window of the case. And if I had a case that didn't have a front glass, you wouldn't be seeing anything that I'm doing. And then the front-facing camera, you can see just a little bit, but my arms are mostly in the way, and half of it is also covered by the case. Nowadays, we've got a couple of mirrorless cameras, so they've got really nice picture with good quality lighting. And we've got a top-down camera so you can see everything I'm doing when the PC is laid down like this. And we've got a really good front-facing camera when the build is standing up and I'm working inside of the case that way. If you wanted more evidence on just how small this build area was, I actually had to put radiators on top of my lap so that I could install the fans on them. It was super inconvenient. Whenever I would drop a fastener, it would be really tough to find because it wouldn't just fall onto the desk. It would be somewhere on the floor. And as you can see, my lighting wasn't that good, so it was really tough to find them. Here's one thing that hasn't changed. I've still got a cute, fluffy puppy. Let's go get him. See? He's still just as fluffy and cute as ever. See? Just as cute and fluffy as ever. All right, let's keep going. Here's just another representation of just how many cables are used by Corsair stuff. All of those little black cables with the yellow tags and all of the little cables around them, those are all just for the Corsair fans. Nothing else. So cable managing 18 plus cables with a couple of control hubs is just a lot of extra work. Here's something that you also won't see me do today, is waiting until this point in the build to attach all my front panel I/O. The USB connectors, the HD audio, the front panel power connectors, all that stuff I do right after I get the motherboard in, and it just makes it so much easier. There's nothing in the way. It's just a better strategy than what I did here. Here's another snippet into why Corsair fans can be so hard. If you want to do any sort of patterns with the RGB, you have to make sure all of your fans are connected in the right order. So here I am, I'm having to trace each one back from the fan all the way down to the hub so that it goes in the right order, not bouncing all around. Another thing that you won't see me doing very much anymore is you'll see I did a whole bunch of zip ties on this case, and it just makes it a lot more difficult if something breaks or if you just want to replace or upgrade something. Cutting through a bunch of zip ties is just really annoying. So whenever possible now, I will use a Velcro cable tie to tighten everything down rather than a zip tie. Something that you'll notice here that I try to avoid a lot nowadays as well is not even starting the cable management until this late into the game. It makes it a lot more difficult to work on the cable management if you don't kind of do it as you go and make sure that you have a plan for where all the cables are going to go. You can see there's a pretty large bundle of cables in the back of that case. And spoiler alert, it's not going to get that much better. In this case, quite literally and figuratively. Thankfully, nobody's ever going to see these cables because they've got this nice cover plate. Even if you pull the back panel off, those cables will be mostly hidden. But it's not really good practice. So something I got a lot better at since 2021. All right, so finally everything's plugged in, everything's connected. I put the panels back on, and that's where I went wrong. You never close all the panels before you actually turn it on because it's bad juju. And look what happens. Here's something else that doesn't really happen either, is I almost never get finished with a build and nothing comes on. You'll see that the power didn't kick on here at all. When I pressed the power button, I double checked that the power was switched on. This is something that after 3 years of building, it just really doesn't happen very often anymore, but sometimes it does happen. Anyways, let's take a look at the final results of this build. All right, well, here is the final product from that build. We did eventually get it running, obviously, and here's what it looks like. So you can see how nicely that engraving really pops. The RGB looks amazing. I mean, kudos to Corsair. They do make some amazing RGB, and the build overall, I think, just turned out really well. And there's me looking all cute. Okay, I don't know why there's that many pictures of me in here. Anyways, yeah, the engraving looked great. The build turned out great. The customer is still using this build almost 2 years later without any issues. Even though we might have fumbled our way along during some of the build process, the end product was still amazing, and that's something that's never going to change and has not changed. We still try to build the best custom PCs with absolute attention to detail. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you like and subscribe. So if you're interested in a PC, or maybe you want to build your own and you just don't know what to put in it, go to my website at redneckengineer.com, and I'll be happy to help you out. See you next time.